Skull injection is a type of cyber attack that occurs when an attacker is able to manipulate a web application's skull query by injecting malicious skull code. This type of attack can lead to unauthorized access, manipulation, or retrieval of sensitive data from a database. Skull injection attacks are one of the most common and potentially damaging security vulnerabilities in web applications that use skull databases. Here's how skull injection works. 1. User input. Web applications often take user input, such as form data or URL parameters, and use it to construct skull queries that interact with the database. 2. Lack of proper input validation. If the web application does not properly validate or sanitize user input, an attacker can inject malicious skull code into the input fields. 3. Manipulating skull queries. By injecting malicious skull code, an attacker can modify the intended structure of the skull query, potentially gaining unauthorized access to the database. 4. Types of skull injection. Classic skull injection involves injecting malicious skull code into user input fields, such as login forms or search boxes. 2. Blind skull injection. The attacker can infer information about the database without directly retrieving it. This is often used when the application does not display skull errors. 5. Potential consequences. Skull injection can allow attackers to bypass authentication, retrieve, modify, or delete data from the database, and in some cases, execute administrative operations on the database server. 6. Prevention techniques. Parameterized statements. Use parameterized queries or prepared statements to separate user input from the skull query, preventing direct manipulation. 2. Input validation. Implement proper input validation and sanitation to ensure that user input adheres to expected formats and does not contain malicious code. 3. Least privilege principle. Restrict database user permissions to the minimum required for the application to function, reducing the potential impact of a successful skull injection attack. 4. Web Application Firewalls (WAF). Implement WAFs to filter and block malicious traffic, including attempts at skull injection. 7. Testing for skull injection. Security professionals often perform penetration testing, including skull injection testing, to identify and remediate vulnerabilities before they can be exploited by malicious actors. 8. Educating developers. Developers should be educated on secure coding practices to prevent skull injection vulnerabilities. This includes understanding the importance of input validation and using secure coding frameworks. Skull injection attacks can have severe consequences, compromising the confidentiality and integrity of sensitive data. It is crucial for developers and security professionals to be aware of and actively address skull injection vulnerabilities to ensure the security of web applications and databases.